I believe everything that we do is a choice. You may not see it at the time, but whatever the choice is, whether it's to go to the gym or not go to the gym, or leave the job or take the job or ask the girl on the date or whatever the thing is, you always have the choice to do or not to do that thing. Once you know that you have had a choice, and once you realize that every choice and decision that you've made up until this point is the reason that you're in this position, whether that's positive or negative, it's quite freeing, because you then know that you have the decisions and the ability to make different choices to come out of that situation. And it's just about knowing that you've made the choice and being okay with that choice if it's going to move you in one direction or the other.
Welcome to Software Snack Bites. I'm Shomik Ghosh of Bold Start Ventures, and today we're excited to have Ben Canning on the pod. Ben is the founder of Hacking Your Health and a fitness coach to high-performance founders and employees across the security and tech ecosystem. And if you haven't yet, check out Ben's podcast. It's highly recommended. Him and Dave Kennedy talk through a lot of the challenges that they go through, that they've heard other people go through. And frankly, it's just a really engaging, real way to talk about health. So Ben actually is even a coach to yours truly. And in this episode, we're going to cover Health 101 tips for founders and startup teams. So I just want to start off with, you coach a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people listening too are kind of like, when they start to work with you, or when someone's even thinking about working with you, where do they most often need to start in terms of kind of starting to make these changes?
The best place to start, I have found, that has the most success long-term is exactly where you're at, because people will come in and they're generally motivated by different reasons, whether it's to do with their health or something that's happened that they want to make the change. And they come in and they're super enthusiastic and they're like, I just want to train 15 times a week and I'm going to go vegan and I'm going to do all these things. And I'm like, okay, chill. We just need to see what is like manageable. And especially people here listening, like the majority of people are busy in terms of their jobs and they're demanding, it's stressful, they've got families or whatever it might be. And my first question is, like, realistically, like, what can you commit to that's not an additional stress in your life long term? Because people are stressed regardless. Life is stressful. And the last thing that I want to do as a coach is come and be an additional stress on that. And I've had clients before and they're like, realistically, I can maybe only do 2 20-minute sessions a week. I'm like, that's cool. We'll start with that. And then you'll know yourself that whenever you get into it, then all of a sudden all this more time becomes available, and that's okay to build on. But I would rather start like lowest effective dose instead of going, right, we're going to do 5 times a week. And then 3, 4, 5 weeks down the line is you're only getting 3 sessions in and you feel like you're failed. Whereas I'd rather we start with 2 and then you're getting 3 in and you think, I'm absolutely nailing this because I'm getting an additional session in. So it's literally just start with where you're at and we do whatever we can to sort of move the needle forward. And then we just gradually refine it and build on it from there.
So I know you're a fan because you sent me the book of Atomic Habits, and it sounds a bit like that's what you're talking about. Is that why you're starting there? Is you just want people to get into the habit formation stage?
Yeah, the habits is the basis of everything that we do, whether it's good or bad. And for me, it's about recognizing what the good ones and how we can build upon them, recognizing what the not so good ones are and how we can start to get rid of them, and just literally build on it from that. And again, it comes down to just deal with one thing at a time. It's the same as a New Year's resolution. Everybody wants to do the 20 New Year's resolutions, and you're not actually going to do any of those things. If you just actually focused on one thing and doubled down on that and nailed it and then started to add things off the back of that, then yeah, like habits and behaviors are key.
What's the most common complaint that you get?
Don't have the time, can't hit my protein target, don't have the support, the environment around me. I'll use your one. I eat out quite a lot with my job. How do we overcome that? So there's plenty to do around food and stuff like that.
So I know what I know what you said to me, which was basically like you could make a choice, and you are making a choice each time you do it. But let's go with, I think, one that a lot of people say is I don't have the time. So what is your response to them? How do you make time? How do you think about doing that?
For me, time comes down to priorities, and you'll never catch me saying that I'm busy, because I just don't like the phrasing around it. I do have a lot of things going on, granted, but I'll never say that I'm too busy. And for me, it's just down to how you look at your priorities. One of the big things is, check your screen time, whether it's how much time you spend on Twitter or if you're watching Netflix or whatever the thing might be. There is time there to do it. Within that, it's about managing expectations. So it's like people have this almost preconceived idea that they need to spend 2 hours in the gym 5 days a week. You don't need to do that. Just do more than you're doing now, and that is progress. So be realistic with your expectations in time. If it's a case of the people around you, have the conversation with them, whether it's family or people at work, whether it's your boss or whether it's your team or whatever it is, be like, look, I need to do this for me because I will be a better person. I need to look after my health or whatever the thing may be, and have a realistic conversation with them about managing expectations and make sure you have the support from them as well.
One thing I want to go into you is you're really good at mindset. Like, I think one of the things you coach a lot of people on is mindset. And again, I think that goes back to the choice thing. Like, that choice, you made the choice, has stuck with me forever. I think one time I told you I was going to a wedding and I was just like, hey, Ben, like, this is screwed up. I'm not going to eat right. I'm not going to exercise. And he was just like, well, sounds like you already made the choice. And I was like, oh, whoa, that hit me. I was like, all right.
But because it's true.
But talk about, like, yes, okay, I understand what you're saying. Like, I made the choice, but at the same time, like, I kind of, I'm telling you how it's going to be, right? Like, there's going to be drinking, there's going to be food, there's going to be all that sort of stuff. So, like, yes, I hear what you're saying. I made a choice, but also, come on, like, it's kind of like, that's the environment too, right?
Yes, I agree. And I'll caveat this by saying I'm not against drinking. I'm not against going and have a good time. Like, I'm very much an advocate of making sure you keep those things in. But if you go into a situation with that decision already made, it's not going to be any different. And you have to be okay with the choice that you've made. I believe everything that we do is a choice. You may not see it at the time, but whatever the choice is, whether it's to go to the gym or not go to the gym, or leave the job or take the job or ask the girl on a date or whatever the thing is, you always have a choice to do or not to do that thing. Once you know that you have had a choice, and once you realize that every choice and decision that you've made up until this point is the reason that you're in this position, whether that's positive or negative, it's quite freeing because you then know that you have the decisions and the ability to make different choices to come out of that situation. And it's just about knowing that you've made the choice and being okay with that choice if it's going to move you in one direction or the other.
Is that something you need to train?
I think so. I think for me, it's more of a perspective thing. Like, somebody asked me recently, like, what one sort of trait or quality that I think that makes me a good coach, and I think I just offer perspective well. It's like asking the other question almost, or giving the other side of the coin. Like I said, I'm okay. Like, I'll go and have a drink, I'll go and eat a pizza, I'll go and eat a burger, like, absolutely fine. But I know that thing is going to have, I guess, impact on whatever the progress is that I'm trying to make. And it is just it's something that you need to sort of go through time after time. It's just another thing about putting the reps in.
Those choices can happen on minutes, hours, daily, monthly. Well, there's so many different cadences, right? So how do you advise people to kind of think about what those are? Is it kind of like a daily choice of maybe just start with, hey, go for a walk, right? Like, that's a daily choice that you can make every day. Is that sort of, or should you be thinking about on an even hourly basis? Like, hey, right now you're sitting on the couch, but you could go for a walk.
The best way I can frame it, and this is what I use for myself specifically, is I always try and think about my future self. So am I, number one, acting in the way that the person that I want to become does or would? And number two, will I be okay with whatever the repercussions of this thing is down the line? Whether that is on a daily thing, an hourly thing, or whatever. It doesn't even necessarily need to be with like health and fitness. Like, I just had a call, so every Thursday we run an experts call within the team now, and Kira, who is a holistic high performance like mindset coach, she was talking about procrastination, and I was giving my 2 cents on it. I was like, for me, when it comes to procrastination, it's generally just something that I don't want to do or I don't value. When it comes down to it, I have to do that thing anyway. So I just make the choice to do it right now, because future me will thank me because I'll already have done it, versus me in a week being like, I have to do that thing now. I could have just done it a week ago. So it's like, always think about your future self, and doing favors for your future self is the way I frame it for myself.
So one thing I've always been curious, and I actually haven't asked you this, but I think I know your answer, is if you had someone that was like naturally gifted, and maybe they ate shitty, but if they just corrected that, like, they would be on track, right? Or you have someone who is going to have to grind every freaking day, like their metabolism is screwed up, they're whatever, like, they're gonna have to grind every single day. Which one will have more success? Is it all about that grind? Is it all about just like getting up and doing the hard thing every day?
I think it's so person dependent. I think it comes from what your drive is to do the thing in the first place. Like, I'll use an example. I have clients that come to me, and the reason that they come to me, it's because they have a health scare. Like, they literally will go to the doctor and they say, look, if you continue living you like this, you're going to die. So they have a big way to go. In my eyes, it could be more difficult for them because they see how far they have to go, and it's a huge gap. But they're more driven because of what the fear is if they don't make the change, versus someone is like, I just want to lose 10 pounds. it's not really life or death situation. They just want to look a bit better and look and feel a bit better. But the thing that then happens is when the first person gets, further away from that sort of threat, they lose sight of the reason that they started in the first place, and a little bit of complacency comes in. So it's about realigning yourself with the goals as you go along and sort of moving the goalpost each time. So I think the grind and the struggle is part of the process, and the doing the hard thing is part of the process. And I think one of the best things that I like about a physical transformation is there is no shortcuts. There is nothing you can do. You can't use ChatGPT. Like, you have to do the hard work. Like, there is no other way about it. And that's why I always respect a good physique, because that person has had to work for it in one way, shape, or form. And it's not necessarily about being, super jacked and having a six pack. I almost respect people on the other side that have lost 100 pounds or 120 pounds. And I see clients of my own, like, they're maybe 100 pounds overweight. They're like, oh, I ran a 5K. And I'm like, I couldn't run a 5K, like respect, because I couldn't run a 5K. So it's like, it often comes down just person to person, in terms of like what their motivation to actually do it is.
Right now, I mean, you do have a six pack. You lift well, right? Like, all that stuff is working. What's your goal, right? Like, how are you setting a physical goal right now where it's like, I don't know, I look at you, Ben, I'm kind of like, he's got the goal already, right? Like, so what's like your goal that you're set now?
For me, the biggest thing that drives me is progress. So I just need to know that I'm progressing. So at the minute, like, actually probably within the past couple of weeks, I'm happy with where my physique is at in terms of like overall body composition. And now the goal is just to sort of maintain that and be able to essentially juggle everything else that's going on. I've said sort of over the past couple of weeks, last year on the whole, I sort of put my own health on the back burner. I still did the stuff and I still went through the motions, but it wasn't necessarily massive focus in terms of making progress physically or in terms of strength. It was heavily focused on business. But I have the habits and the behaviors that I still ate well, because I've done it for the past 10 years. I still went to the gym. I wasn't hitting any massive PRs, but I was still showing up and doing the work. My goal this year is to still do the work in terms of run the business, but continue to do the work in terms of like my actual physique and progress. And I think that the thing is, the goalposts always change. Like, whenever I first started training, I think it was like 157, 158 pounds. Like, I'm 6'2", so I was not built very well, let's say. Skinny fat. And my biggest goal was I just wanted to fit my clothes properly. So like, when you fit the t-shirts and it sits on your shoulders like that, I didn't have that. So I did that and I fitted in the medium t-shirt. I was like, right, I'm going to buy large t-shirts and then extra large and then and like that is how my goals have progressed. And the thing for me now that drives me is I need to lead by example, because I have, like you said, I have 110 clients and I need to lead by example. Like, I need to lead by example in terms of getting the stuff done from a training perspective, eating well, looking good, performing in work, being a good parent. Like, not that there's pressure put on me. I put it on myself to show up and lead by example, to show like you can do this, because I literally do it on a daily basis.
How many years have you been, managing your sleep, managing your nutrition, going to the gym every day? Like, I just want to, like, to get to the physique that you have now, right? I think a lot of people might say, oh, well, Ben's just naturally gifted, right?
It's easy for you.
Yeah, it's easy for you. What about me, right? Like, I can't do that, right? So like, I mean, I think you have like, done it for a number of years and really grinded away at doing it. So kind of describe that for others.
So from the 4th of February this year, it was 10 years exactly since the first day that I set foot in the gym. Now, to give a little bit of context to that, before that, I used to be borderline alcoholic. I used to go out, drink and drugs 5-6 times a week, like escape, hated the life that I lived, was not happy in myself, was doing literally anything I could to escape that reality. So I wasn't exactly a prime candidate in terms of, my physique is going to change. And genuinely, since that first day, like, I remember it very clearly, 4th of February, 2014, like, I walked into the gym, didn't have a clue what I was doing. Like I said, was a skinny fat, like lanky, not strong. But everything that came after that, and I'm not saying that I've been absolutely nailing it ever since then, but I would say just continued progress and continued refinement within that for the past 10 years has sort of put me in the spot now.
What got you in the gym that day?
The guy that actually I used to go out with, we used to party with all the time, he got his PT qualification. He was like, I need a first client, like I need a before and after. And I had tried time and time again, like it wasn't the first time I went into the gym, like I tried a couple of times before. But I think because I was sort of invested in the success of his business, it sort of stuck a little bit more. And we like maybe I think 6 weeks was my first before and after picture, and I literally went from being skinny fat to being skinny, but I had abs and like you could see muscle definition in the shoulders. Like fucking nailed it. Like I am jacked. If I look back at those pictures now, like not by any stretch of the imagination, but it just stuck. And I think the biggest thing for me was it wasn't necessarily about the physical change, and as you said about the mindset stuff, it was the mental change. Is the again, I know I'm in control now. Like the unhappiness, the being a complete pisshead at the weekend, that didn't necessarily go away straight away, but it gave me the sense of I'm in control. I can do hard things. I can put my body through these things, and I can make the change.
Yeah, that's I think so. That's so important. One thing you introduced me to the topic of non-negotiables, and you had this thing. I was like, what are your non-negotiables every day, right? And for me, it was go get morning sunlight, go do a morning walk, like things like that. That I was trying to build those habits. Do you think everyone should define these upfront? And I guess if so, how should they go about finding what those non-negotiables are?
First of all, yes, I think people should have, at least 2 or 3 things that they do on a daily basis. Reason why is because it teaches you discipline to do the thing regardless of what's going on. The second thing is in terms of like how to go about defining them. Do the thing that makes you feel a certain way. So for me, I want to do something that makes me feel good. I want to do something that challenges me. What I've been doing recently is I've been doing ice baths every morning. So I bought myself.
God bless you, man.
And it's cold over here. But the reason that I do it is, number one, I know it makes me feel good after. It's like when I feel good in terms of mental clarity, like I'm absolutely on it after. So my general routine in the morning is I get up at like 4:30. I start into a block of work at 8 o'clock. I go and jump in the ice bath. My daughter's then up. I have breakfast with her and then put her off to school. And then I come back into work. I never want to get into that thing. Like I literally on Tuesday morning I sat and there's a bench just at the end of it. I literally sat looking at it for like 10 minutes. Like, I don't want to get in it. Like I do not want to get in this thing. But again, when I get in, I know that I have the capability of doing the hard thing that I don't want to do, and it gives me the confidence and builds the evidence that I can do hard things regardless of what my emotional attachment is to it. So do something that will challenge you, and do something that will make you feel good, and do those on a daily basis, and just build a habit on that.
You brought up your daughter, and I think that's something that is very common is parents say, the world's crazy, right? I can't sleep. My daughter's waking up at night, right? I can't eat healthy because my daughter's craving chicken nuggets all the time. And like, I'm eating the chicken nuggets, right? Like, what advice do you have to share with parents around managing their health?
The reason that I live the life that I do around her is because I want to, again, give her the example. And I think if we think generationally, the generation that sort of came before us, they didn't necessarily have the tools that we did. Fast food was just introduced. It was convenient. So everybody just ate like an asshole all the time and didn't really know what the repercussions were of that. But now we have the knowledge, which I then think it gives us the responsibility. So if you think about fault and responsibility, it's not necessarily their fault or our fault that we're in the position it is now, but we don't have the excuse. Like we have all the information. So it's up to us to sort of change the narrative of that. Now, I am also very conscious that I don't want to take it to the extreme, the other side. So obviously, we talk about tracking food or we talk about weighing food. I don't want my daughter to see me weigh food all the time and think that that's normal, because I also don't think that that is a normal way to do it. So it's a bit of a balancing act to see, okay, right, how can I teach her about good food, about feeling good, about training, about whatever it is that's going to make her feel better and live essentially a better life, but not take it to the extreme. So I think that it's a bit of a balancing act within that. In terms of the food thing, like, again, she eats what we eat here. But I'm very fortunate, but she always has. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would say that the challenge comes if you have a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old and you've naturally not well up until this point, and you decide to make a change, that change can be difficult. But because she's always known it, I don't want to say it's been easier, but I don't know any different and she doesn't know any different. What I would say in that situation is try and find things that you can sort of swap things out. So you mentioned chicken nuggets. So you can make relatively healthy chicken nuggets if you've got an air fryer and you've got a box of cornflakes. You're pretty good to do it. But it's just about making those changes that they don't really see the change. It's still the same sort of thing, and it's just a better choice, sort of longer term.
Wait, does she eat your daily protein oatmeal thing?
Yeah. She's so funny. Like, I have a video of her from probably about a year and a half. So she's maybe like just turned 3 or just before. And she pulls this tub of protein out of the tub. And I was like, what's that? She's like, protein. I'm like, okay, right. It's like, what does protein do? She goes, gives you big muscles. I'm like, okay, fair enough. But if she's not finishing her dinner, we're like, well, what are your muscles? And she's like, yeah, you're right. And then she'll finish off the protein and she'll just do this. She's like, what do you think now? And I'm like, nailed it. Like, you've got it. So it's just, it's about leading the example and making it fun for her. And she's very good in terms of like, whatever I'm doing, she wants to do. So if like, whatever if I'm having like apple and pear diluted juice. She's like, what juice are you having? And then she has the same thing. So it is good. But again, that's just leading by example. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing that you talk to me a lot about is positive mindset, and I'll be honest, I resisted. Right, I was kind of like, this is a little bit of BS, right? But I will say, like, one of the things I've found really interesting is kind of looking through the high performers, and especially athletes. And so I've listened to a lot of like the Kobe talks that he's done, and LeBron and his trainer and stuff like that. And what's really interesting to me is like pretty much all of them journal, pretty much all of them practice meditation and visualization, and they all like kind of talk about we can do this. And so I will say I will say I am thinking about it a lot more. But I think I want you to describe kind of this sort of that self-talk aspect, and maybe some tips or tactics that you think generally apply to everyone.
I think whenever it comes to the mindset piece, which I think is what you're talking about here, people don't like to often admit that they have a mindset problem. They'll come to me because they want to lose a certain amount of weight, and they're not like, oh, I have a mindset issue. But it ultimately comes down to how you think and feel about yourself and the choices that you make in line with that. And I think that the narrative that you tell yourself is very important with that. And I do talk a lot about like your self narrative. Again, back to what you're saying about the choice that you've already made. For me, within coaching, what I try and do is look after the whole human. It's not just about eat your broccoli and train your biceps. It's about looking after how you think and feel like on a daily basis. And things like mindset, or things like, meditation and journaling and breath work and all those things, I provide them as tools. So we have Sean, he does the 555 club. It's 5 minutes breath work, 5 minutes meditation, 5 minutes journaling. It's available to everybody. It's a company that he runs. There's 5 sessions a day, 5 days a week. I'm not forcing it on anybody, but I'm like, these are things that I use. These are tools that I use, and they're there and they're available. I'm a big advocate for breathwork. And I know that a lot of people, I remember Dave specifically, with the first time that I talked about breathwork, he was like, what are you bringing me into? Like, why am I doing this? And I was like, just trust me on this one, like, please. And then the same thing, he was like, absolutely, like, even for myself, the first time I was like, this is absolutely nuts. And I specifically remember the first time I did it, I was in our previous house and I was like out in the washroom. And the guy was like lying on the ground. I'm like lying this pile of washing, but it was the most outer body experience that I've ever had. And for me, it's just about having the tools of, okay, right, work is stressful, or something's doing my head in, or I've had a shitty day. What can I do to change that? And it's just having the tools to do it. And for me, like, I don't practice meditation all the time. I don't journal all the time, but I know I have those things available if I do want to do them. In terms of getting started, I'm a big advocate of the mind journal. Mine's over there somewhere. You can tell I use it all the time. And the reason that I'm an advocate of that is because it's a little bit more guided. So I've tried journaling a couple of times, and I'm like looking at this blank piece of paper, and I'm like, I don't know what to write here. Like, I'm just literally writing. I don't know what to write. But it gives you sort of guided questions in terms of, like, it'll talk a lot about emotions. It'll give you like a random question every single day. And it just gets you actually to get the words out of your head and put it on paper. So I think in terms of that, getting started, you don't have to do them all, but I would definitely give them a go. Breathwork specifically, the Wim Hof app's absolutely incredible for breathwork. I started on it with the cold showers initially, but the conscious connected breathing that he does, if you're having a day, if you're having a day in work, like a day, and you're looking at your screen, you're like, I know I have so much to do, but I just don't have the ability to focus on any of this. For me, it's about changing what your state is. And if you can go through like 15 minutes of breath work, lie on the floor, and you come back to it, you're in a completely different state to deal with that thing. So it's just about tools. And anything that I teach, regardless if it's nutrition or sleep or training, it's just about arming you with the tools as you know how you can approach your handful of situation to make it more positive, or to make it a better outcome for whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
I always think back to one thing you told me too, where it was raining outside. And I was just like, it's been raining this whole week. I can't go for a walk. And you're like, dude, I live in Ireland. Like, who are you talking to? And I think what I want to explore with you here is how do you get your mindset? Like, I am affected so much by the weather. If it's sunny outside, I could run that 5K. I could do whatever, right? If it's raining outside, I want to sit inside and watch Netflix the whole day and not do anything, right? And I assume that happens to you too, but somehow it doesn't affect you the same way. So what are you doing?
I think for me, it's not giving yourself the choice. And again, it comes back to the emotion thing, like detaching whatever your emotion is in that thing. So if I look outside and it's raining, I'm like, my immediate is like, I don't really want to do that, but I will do it anyway, because if you take it back to the narrative that you tell yourself, it's like, am I willing to do hard things, or am I willing to do things that I don't want to do? If the answer is no, then be prepared for that to filter into every aspect of your life. Whereas if you go, I don't really want to do this, but I know it's going to be good for me in the long term, and you do it anyway, that will filter into every aspect of your life. And it gives you the confidence in yourself, and it gives you that like evidence in yourself that you can do it regardless of what the emotion is. And actually, if you get out in a training, sometimes it's all right. Like sometimes the feeling of the rain, like it'll wake you up a little bit. Unless it's torrential and you've got like a hurricane or something, like wouldn't recommend. But use your common sense. Like if it's just a little bit raining, just put a coat on and go out, and you'll be absolutely fine. So it's just about the narrative that you tell yourself. It's about keeping your promises that you make to yourself, and backing yourself in the situation.
So I want to shift into some of the health pillars that exist out there, and sleep, exercise, nutrition, mental health. I think are some of the core ones. They're all linked together, but I'm going to put you on the spot. What is the most important?
I'm going to say mental health. And the reason that I say this is, if I think back to when I first started coaching, the 4 sort of pillars that I focused on then were body, nutrition, lifestyle, and mindset. Now, in my maturity, I realized that they were absolutely backwards. And now the 4 pillars still exist, but we have them in the opposite direction. So it's mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, and body. And I think if you go into anything and your mind isn't in the right place for it, it doesn't really matter what you do. Then we focus on lifestyle, we focus on nutrition, and you get the body as a byproduct, essentially. So I think that, regardless if it's sleep or regardless if it's training, if you're not going into those things with the right mindset or the right attitude towards it, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. So you need to fix that or focus on that first.
I think that resonates with all the stuff that we just talked about. Pretty much every single question I asked you were just like, well, you have a choice. Yeah. Go to your mindset. You can do it and do hard things. So I think that makes sense. One of the things you made me do early on was track sleep. And I remember what I started to see through the data as I was looking at it was, when I had a week, or let's not even say week, when I had 2 or 3 days even of kind of poor sleep, I noticed like I was walking less. I noticed I was probably eating higher calories. I wasn't going to the gym as much. So what's your starter pack, like non-negotiables for sleep to get people on the right track?
The biggest thing is how you sort of set yourself up for sleep. Because again, knowing the people that I work with, people in tech, people who work computers, like, and myself included, I could sit here until 11 o'clock or later on my computer and then just try and go to bed. Not necessarily an ideal way to set yourself up for sleep. So the biggest thing I talk about whenever it comes to sleep is setting yourself boundaries. So number 1, what time do I want to wake up at? And keep that as consistent as possible, because that will impact everything else that happens throughout the day. So your natural sort of circadian rhythm will dictate when you feel good, when you don't feel good, when you have energy, when you don't have energy. Keep that as consistent as possible. Weekday, weekend, I always try and keep it the same. And then basically work backwards from that. So if I want to get up at 5 a.m. every day and I want to have 7 hours sleep, what time do I need to go to bed at? And then from that, okay, if I want to go to bed at, say, for example, 10 o'clock, from 10 o'clock, at least an hour before that, no screens. So computer goes off, lights go off, lights dim in the house. Before that, what time do I need to have my last meal? Before that, is there anything specifically that I need to do in terms of like get myself to a state of sleep? So if you think about like your central nervous system, if you think about the sort of fight or flight state, like if you're getting chased by a bear, you're not really going to go, I'm just going to have a nap here. Whereas if you think about the other side of that, like rest and digest, like you want to be chill and sort of set the scene for that. So dim lights, dark room, quiet room, cold room if possible. The other one is obviously caffeine. I think we can all agree that we're probably quite heavily reliant on caffeine. And I know people will be like, yeah, I can have an espresso with dinner and then go to sleep. I'm like, yes, you can probably go to sleep, but the quality of your sleep's not going to be good. So for me, I always have a cutoff point of like 2 p.m. absolute latest for caffeine. So it's like not just thinking about, I want to go to sleep at this time. It's like, what has to happen throughout the day before that for me to go to sleep at that time so I can get up at this time, and then sort of my days run in those same cycles.
When your daughter wakes you up at 2 a.m. though, you still wake up at 6 a.m. like no matter what?
Yes. Because I know the benefits of keeping that consistent. And the best way that I can describe it is, and we'll talk weekday versus weekend, for example, because I know that, people are happy to get up at 5 a.m. Monday to Friday, and then they'll get up at like, 10 a.m. on a Saturday because they're, having a lie-in. I'm like,
sleep in. Yeah.
That's like me waking up in Ireland Monday to Friday and then waking up in New York Saturday and Sunday, and then waking up in Ireland,
I guess that's
again on Monday to Friday. Like I literally am giving myself jet lag every single weekend just by waking up at a slightly different time. Like when you think about it like that, that's exactly what it is. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. I guess I hadn't thought about that, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
You said that you could stay up till late at night working on the computer and doing all of that. Some people truly are just like, hey, that's when we get kids are asleep. That's our that's how our mind works. We're able to crack out work, like stuff like that. I mean, what do you say to those people? Should they be staying up late? Can they shift their cycle so that like maybe it's like they do stay up late and then they wake up later? Like, I mean, what do you kind of advise people?
It's recognizing when you work the best and when works for you. Again, like it's so person dependent. I know I work the best in the morning. Like I know that I get the most work done for that block of time between like 4:30 a.m. and 8 a.m. I get the most work done. Like I could get all of my work done in that time and have the rest of the day free. Everything's a bonus after that. But it's taken me a while to recognize that. Some people like working in the evening. That's absolutely fine. Like I'm not saying everybody needs to get up at 4 a.m. Like I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination. Find out what works for you. Do you know what I mean? If you like getting up at 9 a.m. and being a little bit more chill, the guy actually, Kieran, I was on his podcast last week, Total Mental Performance. He said he's the opposite. Like he likes getting up at like 9 o'clock and like, taking his time, having a nice breakfast, going to the gym, and then like starting his day slightly later, and then he'll work. He finds his sort of like zone of genius that he phrased it as was like between sort of like 10:30 and like midnight. And he's okay with that. He'll maybe go to bed at 1 a.m. But if he's getting up at 9, he's still getting 8 hours sleep. So it doesn't really matter when it is, as long as you keep it consistent and it's what works for you.
Okay. Makes sense. Every single podcast we listen to, there's a new sleep stack that comes out. There's a new, you're supposed to do magnesium, but only a certain type of magnesium. And then you're supposed to take something else and sort of stuff like that. Like, and I think supplements are very useful, and we may have some news to share on that. But kind of for someone that's listening to this, though, it can feel overwhelming. That like, am I supposed to be popping pills all day long because I need my fatty, omega-3 fatty acid, and I need to sleep all night, and I need an energy booster, and I need immune compromising, whatever. Like, what are we supposed to do with all this?
I would say there are very few baseline supplements that I would recommend everybody take. I just think that the majority of people are deficient in. The second part of that is if you don't know whether you're deficient in it or not, then get blood work done and then you can work the rest out from that. In terms of like the buzzwords around, sleep supplements and whatever else, if you're not nailing the basics in terms of everything that I just mentioned about setting yourself up for sleep, managing your hydration, managing your recovery, managing your energy levels throughout the day, managing your foods, whatever it is, if you're not doing those fundamental things, the supplements aren't going to work. You need to do, if you think about it as a pyramid, the supplements are like the top 1%. So you do those last. It's like, and I get it because people, whenever I'm on that first call with them, like, right, okay, sign up, good to go.
What supplements? Yeah.
What supplements do I need? I'm like, the supplements that you need are 4 liters of water per day, 8 hours of sleep per night. And they're like looking at me like I'm a crazy person. I'm like, I don't know any of this information without us actually nailing the basics first. So like, it's literally in the name. Nail the basics first and then supplement with the rest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're looking for the easy way out, basically.
Yeah. And back to what I said, there isn't one in this situation, and that's what you need to recognize. And I think that it's tough for people to get their heads around. And there are, I don't want to say I use a lot of supplements. I've went through different phases of using. And I'll blame Dave for this highly because he's like, I'm using this. I'm like, well, if you're using it, I'm using it. And then we go through.
I mean, he does a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But again, the reason that we do it is it's more for an optimization.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'll trial it out because it's something that I'm interested in. And I know I've nailed everything else. So I'll see the direct impact of adding something or taking it out because I have the data. I've done this for 10 years, so I get it. Versus someone that's like, okay, right, first day in the gym. And they're like, I specifically remember myself. Before I actually started training properly, I remember going to the biggest guy that I could find. The guy was enormous. Like he was an IFBB pro, like bodybuilder. And I was like, can you write me a diet plan? Because that's what I thought I needed. Right? Definitely did not. He wrote me one anyway. I remember like it was, he sent me it in the post. So it was like printed. It was sent in an envelope. This is how long ago it was. And so got that was fine. Remember going through the shop and got all the meal plan stuff. It was the worst. Like I cannot describe how bad the food listed on it was, and it was so different every single day. But then there was this list of supplements on the second page, and it was like, so I was like, okay, well, I must need to get all these. And I remember spending like probably the equivalent of like $500 in these supplements. I'd never set foot in the gym. I just bought all this food, and then I'm looking at all these supplements being like, what am I doing? So it's like, these are the things that you think you need, but it's like nail the basics first and then start to introduce those down the line. So for me, I would rather nail the basics first. I don't want someone to come on board with me and then we go, okay, right, these are, here's another $500 you're going to need to spend on stuff that we don't actually know if it's going to work. So nail the basics first, find out what you're deficient in, find out what you're lacking. If you have a problem with sleep after nail the basics, then we can look at magnesium. If you have a problem with energy levels during the day, then we can start looking at something to sort of handle that. If you have an immune problem, then we can start looking at that. Like there's so many things that we can do. But definitely supplements is the last protocol.
Makes sense. Let's move into exercise 101. So I want to start off with the basics of exercise. Again, we've all listened to all the podcasts. We've heard all the things. We're supposed to increase our VO2 max while, also increasing our HIIT workouts, while also, bodybuilding. And also we're supposed to walk 15 miles a day. What are we supposed to actually do here?
First of all, I would say do the thing that you enjoy. So if it is just walking and you're trying to lose a bit of weight, like there's so many other benefits to walking in terms of just actually being outside, for one, having some sort of time in your own head. The second thing that I would say is make sure that you're doing it for the right reason. So obviously there's so many different ways to train and things to do. For me, I like weight training. I don't really like cardio very much. Admittedly, like I'm absolutely fine with that. I will do it whenever I feel like I need to because I know the benefits of it, but I would rather do more in terms of the gym than focus a lot on cardio. I think the biggest thing that I can say whenever it comes to training, and this is probably a recent realization for me, is do what's practical versus worrying about what's optimal. So, I've probably programmed this for you in terms of like cable lateral raises and like bringing the bench over and having the cuffs. And I'm like, well, that's cool. It's not exactly ideal all the time because you're like pissing people off as you're wheeling the bench through the gym. And it's like you just lift the dumbbells and do it with dumbbells. So nail the basics again is probably the best way to put it. The reason that, squats are good, the reason that, bench press, like dumbbell bench press, or the reason that all these things are good is because they've been around for so long. Yes, there are sort of advancements in that, but like while it's cool to be optimal, sometimes it's better to just be practical. If you're looking at setting together a training plan, the things that I would look at are some sort of push exercise, some sort of pull exercise, some sort of squat movement, some sort of hip hinge, and then some sort of like weighted carry. And if you do that 3 times a week, you're absolutely golden. One thing that I will say on just you mentioned HIIT is it's generally the first thing that I take out because it's such a high stress on your body. And again, back to the stress conversation, you're stressed because of family life, you're stressed because of work, you're stressed because of financial studying, whatever the thing is. The last thing you want to do is go to the gym and be even more stressed. So I take that out, try and manage stress a little bit, focus on weight resistance training, a little bit of cardio, a little bit of steps, and then basically we go from there.
Makes sense. One kind of myth, or maybe it's not a myth, but it's something I want to tackle is, strength training versus cardio for fat loss versus weight loss. And maybe first, actually, the first question is, what does fat loss mean versus weight loss?
Fat loss specifically is changing your body composition in terms of like getting rid of the fat. So if we think about body recomposition, there's 3 ways to look at it. Number one, the holy grail, you will build muscle and lose body fat at the same time. Take that all day long if you can get it. The second one is your muscle mass will stay the same, but your body fat will reduce. Or the third one is your body fat will stay the same and your muscle mass will reduce. Overall, your body fat percentage is going to be different in some way, shape, or form within that. Weight loss is, if I cut your arm off, you're going to be lighter. Like that is what it comes down to. Yeah, people are so focused on what the weight is. And you'll know this yourself. Like we look at more than just that as a metric. So we'll look at photos, we'll look at measurements, we'll look at what your weight is. And sometimes your weight will stay the same, but your measurements are coming down, your photos are changing, then we're golden with that. So it's understanding that your body will do weird and wonderful things depending on when you're training, what you're eating, how your body responds to certain things, and your weight's not always going to play ball. And that's one of the hardest things for clients to get over as well, is because they're so attached to what the number on the scale is that they think that that's their only marker of progress. Whereas if you're looking at measurements or how your clothes fit or your ability to run up the stairs instead of struggle to get up the stairs, like there's so many other things to look at. So for me, the difference is fat loss is about body composition and weight loss is just solely focused on what your relationship is with the scale and gravity, essentially.
So if we're tackling now, let's say for most founders out there, they want to improve their body comp. What should they be focused on, strength training or cardio?
Am I allowed to say both?
You're allowed to say both. You're allowed to say whatever you want.
The best way I can put it, and I have to give credit to one of my former clients, James, he put it to me, he's like, if you think about weight training as building the engine and cardio as burning the fuel, and looking at it like that. So if you use weight training to build a better engine that will then allow you to burn the fuel more efficiently, you're going to quote unquote get away with being able to eat more calories. So for me, weight training and going to the gym in terms of lifting weights should be about getting stronger and building the engine. Cardio will help you recover, it will burn the fuel, and it will be used as a tool to sort of help improve overall cardiovascular health. I've seen it time and time again where people come to me like, I'm doing like 5 hours cardio a week and I've lost all this weight, but I'm not happy how I look, because they haven't spent the time actually building the muscle underneath it. So they go from being skinny fat to just being super skinny, and they don't have that athletic physique. I'm like, well, you've never lifted a weight in your life. Like, why are you going to expect to look a certain way? And I think, if I take it right back to cardio, I know if I do 30 minutes on the bike, after that, I'm hungry all day long. And you'll see people that be like, well, my Apple Watch says I burnt 537 calories. So that means I'm allowed to eat 2 cupcakes. And they have this relationship with like buying back the food because they've been on the bike. So you think about using weight and resistance training as building the engine. And if you think about cardio as burning the fuel, is the best way that I can put it.
So for the average person, and I know this is going to be hard for you to say because you do tailor it a lot to everyone individual, but I want you to just take that out of your mind. Average person, basic weekly workout regimen. I'm assuming it's, for example, 1 day push, 1 day pull, maybe 1 day cardio, rest day, and then, repeat that. What would you kind of say?
I would say a pretty solid foundation, if you can manage it time-wise, is to get 3 workouts in the gym. If you're going to do 3, I would probably recommend doing them full body because it'll give you more opportunity to hit the muscle groups across the week. I always focus on a number of minutes of cardio across the week. So it's not like, on Tuesday you have to do 40 minutes of cardio. It's like, look, do 60 minutes of cardio across the week. Get your heart rate to like 130 BPM and you're good. It's not too stressful. You'll get a sweat on. It'll be hard to breathe. You'll be fine. And then obviously steps on top of that. So the best way to do it is 3 full body sessions, 60 minutes of cardio across the week. It doesn't need to be 10,000 steps. Like if you're doing 2,000 steps a day now, it's going to be pretty difficult to get straight to 10,000. So just next week, try and do 3, then try and do 4, then try and do 5 and build it up. The 3 full body sessions a week is pretty good going. And I'll say this as well. This has changed recently for me this year. I'm doing shorter sessions that are more intense. So for the longest time, obviously because I used to work in a gym and I used to have the freedom during the day essentially to train for 3 hours, it was fine. Now my sessions are like 45 minutes to an hour, absolute maximum. I'm getting more from them. I'm doing them more consistently because I know they're only going to take me 45 minutes to an hour, which means I'm actually getting more from actually doing them. And they can be a mix between full body, some are full body pull, some are full body push. But for the average person, whoever it is that the average person is that you're describing, 3 full body sessions a week, 60 minutes of cardio, and some sort of walking throughout the day or throughout the week.
That volume or intensity thing is something I'm curious about. So kind of describe the trade-offs between those. And should we be doing 10 reps of an exercise or should we be doing 6 to build more muscle?
The best way that I can describe that is if you're focused on solely building muscle, you can do anywhere from 10 reps to 30 reps. That's sort of like the hypertrophy range that you're going to build muscle. If your goal is to get stronger, you need to lift heavier weights. You're not going to do super heavy weights, 30 reps.
Right.
So you're going to do like anywhere between like say 2 and 6 solely focused on strength. For me, I want to be bigger and I want to be stronger. So I want to be able to do both. I don't want to look strong and not be strong. So I want to make sure that I have a mix of both. So for me, I would vary the rep ranges. I'm a big fan for my own personal training that I'll do, 2 sort of working sets of like say between 5 and 10 reps, and I'll do 1 back off set of like 15 reps or something. So I get a bit of a mix of both. Understand what your goals are, understand what you want from the situation. In terms of the intensity volume conversation, I would prioritize intensity over total volume. Because there's no point in doing like looking at your total volume and being like, my heavy app told me I lifted 50,000 pounds today in my leg day. Like, but what intensity did you do that at? Like, focus on actually getting strong in the muscle and not just the movement, and actually contracting muscle and feel it. Intensity is probably one of the most difficult things to train. And that's why I do as many sort of in-person events as possible, because the thing that I find with people that I train specifically is they train alone, whether that's in the gym by themselves or they have home gyms or whatever. So they don't really have any like gauge as to what it should actually look like. They're just going by how they feel. And then when they see somebody train with intensity, like, oh shit, okay, I better ramp this up. So for me, intensity over volume all day long.
So I want to move into my hardest topic, which is nutrition. And oh man, this one is what I still struggle with every day. And it's just, I can lock in my sleep, I can lock in my exercise, I can, I will say I'm getting better about the self-talk stuff and things like that. But nutrition for me is like my biggest weakness. I have zero willpower. If you put a cake in front of me, like I'm demolishing that cake. There's just like that's my vice. Like it's going to happen. Like it just is. And so let's describe some of the tips that you give to people in busy lives with a lot of work in terms of managing their nutrition. Does everyone need to be tracking stuff all the time? Is there like shorthand stuff that they can do? Like kind of any basic tips that you have?
First of all, the thing that I would say is keep the cake in. Like make sure that you keep the thing in that you love, because I think where people fail or where people struggle with is by being super restrictive. So like, it's the 1st of January, you're like, I'm going to be good, I'm going to be healthy. And you just get rid of all the fun shit in your life. And like, what way is that to live? Like, how is that meant to be like something that's sustainable? In terms of should you be tracking, I think that tracking is a good tool to do to see where you're at with calories. So again, if I think about the person and, say today's your first day, what I would say is like track your food for 2 weeks and just see how many calories you eat. Because I could calorie calculator and put your details in, it will give me some random number, but it could be thousands of calories off depending on what you already eat. So track your food gives you a bit of an idea as to where you're at specifically, and then we just adjust based on that. So if you track your food for 2 weeks and say, for example, you average 2,500 calories and you're losing weight, cool, we just stick with that. Or if your weight stayed the same and the goal is to lose weight, then we'll just drop it down slightly. Or if you've put on weight, then we know that we need to play about with it slightly more. What tracking does is gives people an understanding of how food's made up, because people don't think about, I probably think about food slightly differently. Like I'll look at a plate of food and think about, okay, protein, fats and carbs, and like sort of X-ray vision break it down. But again, I've been doing it for 10 years, and I'll say like I don't track my food all the time. Sometimes I'll sort of remind myself that I need to see how far off I am in terms of my guesstimates. But again, back to the conversation is like, I don't want to be weighing everything on the scales in front of Harper all the time. So yeah, it's a good tool to do, but I don't think it's a forever thing. Some people will live and die by it, and that's absolutely fine if you want to do it. But I think it is definitely a good tool. In terms of like people who are busy, I realize it's a frustration. The thing that I will say is it will literally take you 15 seconds to input the food on MyFitnessPal. Like the way that I do it is, either if I'm cooking it or I'm eating it, I'll input it there and then instead of like, yeah, I'll do it later, because there's absolutely no way I'm going to remember later on to actually do it or what I had. So just do it there and then. Like if we think about, again, atomic habits and we think about habit stacking, my habit stacking of tracking food is eating food. Eat food, track it. Like that's the habit. You're going to eat the food, so just track that as the habit. In terms of do you need to do it all the time, the best tip that I can do this, and this is maybe a little bit controversial, but I think it's something that needs addressed. I think that the fitness industry has shifted so far into flexible dieting, and if it fits your macros and you can eat whatever you want, that it's gone too far. And like people are in the position that is because they have had that freedom. You need to almost like rein it back a little bit. And I'm not saying don't eat the cake, as we know, but it's about having a little bit more structure and a little bit of a plan. The best thing that I can say to do is build out your days around a rotation of meals. So have 3 options for breakfast, 3 options for lunch, 3 options for dinner, and 3 options for a snack. And you know that every breakfast that you have is going to be 400 calories and there's going to be 40 grams of protein. Same for lunch, same for dinner, and just rotate through them. I know some people like myself, I could eat the same food every single day and it wouldn't faze me whatsoever. And the one thing I actually like about it is I can predict how I'm going to feel. So I know whenever I have my eggs in the morning, how I feel after that. Whereas if I end up and I go out for like a breakfast burrito or something, I'm going to need a nap straight away. Right. So it's like having an understand about how food makes you feel, and just rotating through those. And it doesn't mean that you need to track, because you know each of those meals is going to be around about 400 calories and around about 40 grams of protein. And if you just have different ones that you can pick and choose from, it means that it's not quote unquote boring, and you can just sort of cycle through them, and you don't have that sort of like anal attachment to the numbers of actually tracking the food as you go.
Let's address this though for some people who are like, okay, let's just say 3,000 calories is a number that most people gain weight at. If they eat 3,000 calories of donuts, do they gain the same amount of fat as if they ate 3,000 calories of pure protein and fiber?
No, your body composition will be different. So this comes back to the conversation of a calorie is not a calorie, which is a whole infinite rabbit hole that we can go down. But if you think about how your body processes and handles foods, number one, whenever it comes to protein, your body will utilize up to anywhere between 25 and 30% of the calories that you consume actually just digesting it. So even if we take 3,000 calories of protein solely and 3,000 calories of donuts, you're not actually getting 3,000 calories worth of protein because of how your body processes and digests it. It's going to be about 25% less, whereas you sure as shit are getting 3,000 calories worth of donuts on the other side of it. So it's understanding how your body processes and digests certain foods. That's why I put such a high emphasis on protein as we go through it. The other thing is like the society level of that on the other side of it. Like 3,000 calories of donuts is probably not a lot. And you could probably do that in 4 or 5 donuts and still be hungry throughout the rest of the day. So it's like, what's actually going to keep you full throughout the day? And probably more importantly is like, how do you feel? Like, and this is where the sort of, if it fits your macros, like I'm calling bullshit on it. It's like, and I remember whenever I first started, it's like people are like eating Skittles and Pop-Tarts and they're posting on Instagram. I'm like, that's cool and all, but you're sending the wrong message because it's like, yeah, just swap this chicken breast for a Pop-Tart and a Greek. I'm like, no, like that's not real food. So for me, in terms of the basics, whenever it comes to food, like 80% whole foods, like something that has either been alive or grown on the ground, that is nutrient dense, that is like the food is the ingredient. And we actually did a bit of an experiment with this through January. I tried to eat solely whole foods. Now, there's a bit of a gray area between whole foods and processed versus ultra processed. Yeah. The way that I would describe it is, if you can make it in your kitchen, or if it was a food that was available 150 years ago, like butter obviously has to go through a process, but I could I'd probably have to YouTube it, but I could definitely make it in the house in some way, shape or form, versus ultra processed. And I found like I felt incredible by just sort of like reining it back from the sort of like getting rid of protein bars or getting rid of even protein shakes. I felt much better in terms of like how I felt the fullness, how I felt in terms of energy throughout the day. So have an understanding of how food makes you feel. So 80% whole foods, 20% party time. Eat cake once a week if you want. Do you know what I mean? If you're talking about 3,000 calories a day across the week, you could fit a whole cake into that and be absolutely fine. But that's the way that I would do it, because the 20% sort of is having a pizza at the weekend, or, you know, if it's having a margarita, or, you know, whatever the thing is, that's the sort of like life part of it, and making sure you keep that in, and you can still make progress by doing it that way.
I think everyone's heard why protein is important, and I think it's great that that's coming out more and more often in terms of all the podcasts and nutrition advice out there. My question for you though is, one, you know, most of the time, especially if you're consuming animal sources, it's probably higher in saturated fat that you're getting, so cholesterol wise and stuff. And then two, like, you know, I don't actually know the data, but like some people say, hey, it can affect your kidney or stuff like that. And so I guess like for someone who's saying, okay, I am going to commit to eating a higher protein diet, are you then telling them, hey, you got to kick that fiber up then like a shitload to balance that out, or how should we be thinking about that?
It comes down to your tolerance for it. And I'll give you my real world example of this. Like one of my favorite coaches that I ever had, Callum. We went from, I used to have 6 meals a day that was 40 grams of protein, and we were trying to increase calories. And I'm not recommending eating like this, but I'm telling you my experience. And he was like, right, I want to kick it up to 50 grams of protein per meal. So that took me up to 300 grams of protein. My body did not like eating 300 grams of protein a day. Like it just, I want to say it was a shit show, but there's definitely better phrasing that could come into that situation. So I understand my tolerance for protein is probably about 220 to 240 grams of protein per day. Again, I've been doing this for so long, like I could eat that without even really thinking about it. So understand how your body digests food, understand where your limit is within that, understand to do that gradually, because I don't want you to go from eating 50 grams of protein to eating 200, because your body will be like, what the fuck again? Like if you think again back to how it digests it, the best way I can describe it is, if you ever go to like an all-you-can-eat barbecue place, like a Brazilian barbecue place, where you have the thing and they bring it out and they cook.
Oh, so good. It's the best.
Yeah, so good. But you are not in a good state after it, because you've just eaten so much.
Yeah, you get the meat sweats.
yeah, exactly. But the meat sweats is your body trying to actually digest that protein. So it's going to take longer. It's going to be harder for your body to digest. You know, there's so many digestive issues come with that. So find out sort of what your tolerance is in terms of that per meal. And if you do need to up fiber to make sure your digestion's functioning properly, then yes, definitely do. Because again, with digestion, if your digestion's not functioning, it doesn't matter how many steps you do or how far you run or how much food you're eating. You may as well bang your head against that wall and hope that you're going to make progress of that. So yeah, in terms of what you're saying is, yes, increase fiber to make sure that your body's able to digest the protein in the food that you're consuming.
So I think that was a tour de force in all things around being healthy and living a healthy lifestyle. I guess, you know, last question I have for you before we wrap things up is, take all the clients and everybody you've ever talked to, what is the core piece of advice you're giving again and again and again to everybody to help them on this journey of leading a more healthy lifestyle?
I think where I see people see the most success is by going all in on it, not half-assing the situation, like go all in, like commit to doing the thing. I think where people struggle with is they do it for a short amount of time, they half-ass it and they don't get the results, so then they sack it off. And then in 6 months, they go through that same sort of cycle. I think that the biggest thing is people just don't actually spend the amount of time that they need to actually see the progress on the other side of it. It's difficult. And the reason that whenever you come on board with me, it's a year commitment is because I feel like it takes a year to really, number one, see a huge change. Number two, set yourself up with the habits you can do this long term, plus the education so you don't need me forever. And I think committing to it for that long period of time is something that people aren't willing to do. And I think that that's where they struggle. Going all in on it is like, there's a number of clients that come to my head straight away. And that I just think that it's incredible the progress that they've made. And the reason that they've made the progress that they did is because they've went all in, like they fully committed to it. And I think for me, that's something that's transferable into every aspect of life. You know, if you're talking about founders, like you're going to go all in on whatever the business is. So why would you not go all in your sort of physical and mental health and things like that?
Yeah, I think that that makes a ton of sense to wrap it with. So Ben, like, thanks so much for the time. I think I usually ask, is there anything you'd like to highlight? I know you have some things that you'd like to highlight for the audience. So why don't you dive into those?
I guess the one thing that I want to sort of reiterate is the what I'm trying to achieve here is I sort of recognize the market that is a naturally unhealthy market. They don't really have control over their health. And with Dave's sort of influence in the cybersecurity space and what we're trying to do with We Hack Health as a whole is I feel like I'm on a greater mission to change the narrative of that. So with We Hack Health, like that will continue. There's plenty of like new opportunities for collaborative coaching and other programs coming down the line. One thing that we are doing that has been super under wraps, and I have found it so difficult to keep it a secret, and I'm glad that we're able to talk about it today. Dave and I are starting a supplements company. It sort of started as a bit of a joke and a bit of a passion project, but because we've sort of went through this, you know, I'm a big advocate of how we can create supplements that will help us perform better. Mainly for me, truthfully, in terms of like how I can focus better at work. So nootropics is going to be heavy focus for me. Dave is obsessed with pre-workout, so we have all that sort of covered. So within the next couple of months, we're going to launch it actually in the next couple of weeks here at my next client event. So the supplements company will be coming. The company name will be 0 Day. So we're looking forward to getting that launched. But yeah, anything We Hack Health, anything 0 Day, give me a shout. We'll be on all social media platforms and we'll be good to go within the next couple of weeks.
That's so cool. I'm looking forward to using the supplements, frankly, because it will make my life a lot easier. The tracking and the mindset stuff that you do, frankly, it teaches us a lot and gives us a lot of control. Like I was just in India, I ate like shit. I didn't move at all. And
how did you feel?
I didn't feel that great, you know, but it was still great to spend time with family and do that. And then the funniest thing was, normally I would be like, oh man, you know, I gotta get back in the gym, and like I just had a setback and I've gained all this fat and all this sort of stuff. And for me, you know, the mindset and all that sort of thing was like, I can control this. And I got back in the gym. I you know, was able to drop like you know, on the scale, I was able to drop like, you know, call it 3.5 pounds in a relatively short time period. And, you know, now I'm back to sort of my normal state. And I think it's very cool to have those dials and be able to know that you can control them, which I think you teach really well versus before when I just like kind of throw up my hands and just be like, this sucks. And I just blew all this training that I did. And what's the world coming to? So I think that's amazing that you teach people that.
Cool. Yeah, well, I'm glad that you have that mindset shift. And again, thanks for having me on. It's been a long time coming.